Welcome, everybody, to another Builder Stories. Today, I'm here with Shaalin Parekh, and we are going to talk about some finance stuff and a lot of the cool agents that he's building. Shaalin, welcome to the podcast or the video or the vodcast. Let's call it that.
Thanks for having me, Colin. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about agent AI and I love talking about agents.
Yeah, I could tell just from the intro conversation we had before we hit play, like you're jamming all in this and just learning at a crazy pace that I'm sure a lot of the audience here will just want to soak up kind of how much you've learned just in the last 3 months. Um, so let me start this. I always never assume that I get anybody's background story. I did some, looking up on you, but I was just like letting people share their own stories. So I tell everybody on all these, I'm a comic book fan. I love origin stories, the whole concept and idea of an origin story. So would love just to hear kind of your origin story and a little bit of your journey kind of through the finance world that kind of brought you to this point to start your own company and kind of help other companies kind of penetrate into the finance world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think about my career's had three phases. I'm in the third phase. The first phase primarily was working in financial services. I worked at Capital One, credit card company, but I worked in the banking side of it. And I was doing a lot of data analytics strategy type of stuff. So actually very different than the next phase. One of the things that I ended up getting involved in was implementing software, implementing CRM system, implementing marketing automation, implementing sales enablement technology. And so I got really familiar with the technology world through that process. And my one big observation was that some companies were really good at understanding the nuances of me as a customer to bank, and some were not. And I realized that there was a huge opportunity because financial services is a little bit slower to adopt that type of technology. And so there's this huge market that they need to get to, and they could do it a lot better if they spoke to us the right way. So then I went to phase two, which is working at a company called Seismic, a sales enablement platform. It's kind of in the sales and MarTech ecosystem. And my role was industry marketing, industry go-to-market, and I helped them with their financial services strategy and figuring out who to target, how to talk to them the right way, how to reach them, how to do that all differently than you would do if it was a tech company or a different industry. So I did that. That was a successful run. I've been in at other tech companies in product marketing roles. But then I realized that work at Seismic was pretty unique and started to become really relevant as companies, a lot of SaaS companies needed to expand beyond selling to other SaaS companies, which still is and was pretty common because that's an early adopter. And so I started a consulting business where I focus on helping SaaS companies break into or expand their presence in financial services. And that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. And what led me to, which would probably be your next question, which is what led me into agent building. But we could probably get into that as a follow-up question.
Yeah, I mean, I love to go there, but let me ask a question before, kind of bridge it. Now you're an entrepreneur, right? Like you're a runner of your own company now. Like, talk to me. A lot of people are thinking about that, especially a lot of people that are building agents, right? They're using that, and we hear a lot of people talk about this transition of the next wave of unicorns and startup companies are much more in the agent world. But I want to hear from you. Like you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder now. Like, tell me the difference in mindset between the employee or you're a startup, so you went big company startup entrepreneur now. Like, want to double click into that a
Yeah,
little bit because that's like its own progression in and of itself. And like, what have you learned from that?
it's a great question. Yeah, you're right. Smaller company, like smallest company. So, yeah, that's totally right. I think the it's to, it's what's great is the ability to just feel like you have to deliver value to earn your living. So you just feel so much more connected to from between the work you do and the value that you deliver because you have to get I do mostly consulting work, so I have to get the next consulting engagement. I have to deliver. I have some selectivity in terms of what sorts of projects I work on and who
Sure.
I get to work with. I mean, not always, but I get some selectivity in that. I get to be really focused and be very project based, which is always really interesting. Kyle and I were talking about this before we started. which I get to learn about a bunch of new spaces, right? When you're working at
Mm.
one company, you do get to work on new problems all the time, but I'm constantly working with new people in new industries, having to learn new products, have to learn what their product is. So I get to learn all the time. I get to work on be on kind of very isolated in a good way. I get to isolate and really get deep on certain problem areas or project areas. So I've really enjoyed the shift.
Never bored, right? That's what I'm hearing from you. Never, nothing's boring now. You're always learning and challenging yourself. So, all right, so that, you hooked you teed it up great. Now I'm going to go there and knock it out. So that all led you to now you're doing a lot of consulting. Now you and how did agents start fitting into that, or how are you fitting agents or building of agents into kind of the consulting work that you're doing?
Yeah, the agents have started. It's so funny. I must have signed up for a wait list or something, agent AI builder something, and I honestly had no idea what an agent was. I think ChatGPT was around obviously at the time, and AI was around, but beyond that, I didn't really know what it was. All I knew was one, I'm not working at a company, so I have a lot more flexibility in terms of what tools I use and how early I can adopt things. So my only thought process was, oh, I could be really early adopter to this AI stuff. And then I got the, oh, you're off the wait list notification for Agent AI. And I was like, I don't remember what this is. Let me go see what it is and figure it out. And you start off and you're just kind of, you have to think about like, what's the use case for this?
Yeah,
It was kind of a very open field to think about what am I going to build? Was this supposed to be for? And we've all the builders have been figuring it out along the way. But I think at the time I had this one very specific use case, and it was, so I had seen a former colleague post this idea on LinkedIn of you can, financial services in particular, or if you're selling to financial services, you have financial services customers, it's hard for them to commit to a case study for regulatory reasons. They're just a lot more risk averse. And so somebody had shared a Google search snippet. If you search this, if you know your customer is Capital One, you can see if they've done other case studies. And maybe if they've done other case studies, then they're open to it. That was the idea. And I was like, okay, well, that's a Google snippet. And I started poking with Agent AI, and I got it to be more robust than that. It was a workflow. It was like I can plug in all of my customers, and it'll search them, and it'll analyze that information, and it'll recommend something. So it takes steps beyond that. So that was the first agent that I built and the first idea that I had. But my general thinking was as to why I got into it was I can be an early adopter. This AI stuff is going to be really transformational. I don't know how, but I'd rather be on the leading edge of that than on the other side. So let me just get into it and try to figure it out.
that's cool. And just to expand upon people a little bit more about this first agent you're talking about, it's really powerful because if you're a marketer at a company and you're thinking, or in sales or whatever, and you're trying to identify case studies, well, it goes out and load in your customers. It'll go out and see if any of those customers have done case studies for anybody else through this, like you said, a very specific or parameters and very specific workflow that it's kind of following. Really, really cool idea. Very, specific agent, but like that's super powerful. If I can, get a spreadsheet and throw in 100 customers and find out, oh, these are the 20 that I should target because they're more likely to do this because they've done it in the past. That's a huge, huge task that somebody doesn't have to do now. That's done in literally minutes, right?
And normally that's the thing that you figure out at the last minute. It's the most out of your control. So you feel like I have a happy customer. I work with my champion to write a really awesome case study, and then it gets not approved by compliance at the end of it. It's a really common story you'll hear from people that are doing exactly, the job that I used to do or some version of it, where
Yeah.
they're trying to sell to financial services, and they're getting told internally like we need these case studies because we need to keep selling in this vertical and we need case studies, right? So you're under a lot of pressure. And then you did the one thing that's like really out of your control, which is their, you know, lack of openness to putting their name on things, which happens, and that's fine. So yeah, how can you? I think there's a couple elements to it. One, I think a lot of people may not have ever thought. I had never thought that, and I used to work in this space, right? So
Yeah.
until I saw this former colleague post the Google search, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'd never even done it myself in the job. So one, that idea is probably not something everyone thinks about. And then two, even if you have the idea, analyzing the information, searching it the right way, all that's a lot of work. But if you can just cut that down to literally, like you said, put in your customer list and it'll recommend, hey, these three are the most likely. and you go check to see if they're happy customers, the relationship is good, all the other things that you obviously need to do. It's not going to do all the work for you, but it saves that customer marketer, product marketer significant amount of time.
I want to ask you this, Sean. I don't know if you've thought about it this way, but what you're talking about, I mean, yes, it helped. You're the subject matter expert on this. You've done this before. You've run into these roadblocks. You know how important that specific use case is. And we'll get into some of the others. But what you're talking about doing, like, you're product manager in that. Have you ever done product before in your life? Like, is that a role that you've had any experience with?
No, no. Like I said, I've not at the I have implemented technology, but as you know, right, from your HubSpot days, that's very different
Yeah.
than this. So I have some idea of, hey, think about what the customer needs, what they're trying to accomplish, like the basic principles. But like I mentioned earlier, when I first opened up Agent AI, like when you think about, like you said, you're a product manager, you have a bunch of building blocks,
Yeah.
and that's it. So you have to all of the and that's been honestly the most fun part, which is so you have to think about the use case. We just talked through a great use case, but that's one. I don't know if it's half of it or that's part of it. But then to the product manager part, you have to think about what's the user experience, what's the most little simple things. Like I have another agent where you could ask a user to put in a LinkedIn URL, or I could save them the step and have them put in a person name and a company name,
Yeah.
and I could have the agent try to get a 80% hit rate on getting the because I don't like maybe they don't have the URLs handy. So you think about user experience in a different way. You think about, okay, well, if I'm a user, what's the easiest way to the lowest friction way to use this?
Right.
How can I make sure the other thing that a lot of builders have started doing that I tried to take to heart is consumability or readability of the output. And so you think about, an internal software implementation, some of the same ideas apply. You want to make it really user friendly so people don't make mistakes or they'll really utilize it in the right way. And so you have to think about that input, like I mentioned. A lot of builders and I have also done a lot of very pretty HTML output
Yeah.
formatting.
Alex, who I talked to a couple weeks ago, was building some of that to let other people bolt onto it, right? It's a whole function you call or agent that you call that helps you get really pretty output. Super powerful.
Exactly right. So if you think about product management, there's that. And the last thing I'll say, because I think that is a great point you brought up, is figuring out when enough is enough. So product managers, the classic internal conversations at companies between a product manager and other people is when is it good enough to one to get out the door and have people test so you can get feedback. So
Yeah.
like what's the right amount, what's good enough, and then just in general, as a builder you can get really particular about making it really perfect because it has your name on it, but what is the right level of um of doneness
Polish. Yeah.
for polish for people and accuracy. There's also it's AI, right? So there's accuracy and accuracy. There's little things like that. So the LinkedIn profile example is a good one. I actually have an agent where, like I mentioned, at first I opted, I did, you can put in a name at a company, it'll go retrieve the person's name, but it's wrong sometimes. And people will get very unhappy when it pulls incorrect information for good reason. And so then I updated it. So I said, okay, you have an optionality. You can put in that, or you can put in the LinkedIn URL and you'll get 100% accuracy, but that's your choice.
Just to keep talking about some of your agents, like one of the other ones you built was kind of the expert opinion research agent, right? And, I just went and played with that because it's like, all right, let's see if I can find some other experts who would be good to bring on this podcast and talk to. And, a little bit of feedback for that, obvious, but it's no surprise. It's clearly going to find the most popular people out there on the web. So some of these big hitters, like I think it recommended Darmesh. Of course it recommended Darmesh, but, getting somebody like that, it's like, all right, what is your reach? You could fine tune it as you go and then put in some of your people. But it's super useful, especially if a lot of people just don't even know where to start. And you've got somebody like you who's a subject matter expert on some of these things that have kind of like, all right, let me format it down for you, at least get you started. And build these things. The ICP builder, ideal client persona, my ideal client, yeah, ideal
Ideal
customer.
customer profile, but that sounds just about right too.
It's the same thing, basically the same thing. But basically, for those that don't know, it's like, all right, I've got a product that I'm trying to go out and sell to other customers. Can I look at my existing customers and identify patterns recognition that make them similar to help me say, hey, what is it these 10 people or these 10 companies have in common? Because they all bought from me. And what other companies are out there like that? Like, that's super useful for salespeople, and marketers too, because if they're thinking about the content they're trying to go out and produce more of. But like, yeah, just the way you've been able to kind of bring some of these things together. And I don't know if do you want to expand upon any of these instead of me kind of like, singing your praise here on some of these
No,
things?
I love your excitement about them. That makes me happy. We've talked about one of my favorites. The other two are my other two favorites. I see people that I'll talk about because it's been the most validated externally. It's been used. I just checked like 13,000 times
Yes.
um, by people. And somebody just emailed, or they didn't email me. I reach out sometimes when I get we see when people write reviews. So I reached out to someone who just his review was like, wow. And I said, hey, tell me more. And he was like, I've been using this all night. I just sent it to 400 people to use. So the feedback was really positive. But I will say, and I'm not saying it's just the right combination of using what all the power that we all know exists in AI, creating some workflows and prompting around it. Like, it's actually very simple behind the scenes,
Yeah.
but it's amazing the power if you like you said it as if you put your product manager hat on and you just get some of this stuff right. It's amazing what can happen. And it's so fun to see the feedback and to see how it works. But that one is exactly what you said, and I'll tell a little bit of story around it because I think this is interesting. That the impetus for why I built that is there was a period of time when people were talking about on the internet, hey, asking if you use ChatGPT or an LLM a lot and it knows you, ask it about yourself, ask it to tell you stuff about you. And I was really impressed how it read between the lines. It didn't tell me
Mm,
stuff I had told it, it inferred. It said, by the way you ask questions, I perceive that you're like this. I asked ChatGPT to describe me, I think. I said, describe me in a paragraph or something like that. And I was like, that's really interesting. So that got me to thinking this concept of, well, if you know about somebody, the ICP question is a huge question all the time in tech, which is like, and it's gotten increasingly important, which is like we want to focus on selling to the people we know are most likely to be our customers, who are our best fit customers, and it's really hard to figure that out. People will say, oh, CMOs. And like, okay, well, any CMO, that's not helpful. But if we use what I just mentioned in my personal experience, where it can really figure people out, which is a little creepy but impressive, and you feed in, it's just LinkedIn data. But what I
yeah.
ask the model to do is like, how do these people write? Do they write with metrics? Are they goal oriented? Do they talk about their team? Do they talk about their company? Are they individual oriented? And like those things are oftentimes there are common threads among your ideal customers or your buyers, and it'll find career trajectory progression patterns and say, oh, you tend, like a lot of times, like we've been talking about early adopters. Maybe your company sells to early adopters, and I can figure that out, and then you can focus on finding more of those. So I think that one for salespeople and for marketers, people have been really happy with the results that one returns.
I'm gonna piggyback on that too. I don't know if you try to do this, but something I've done with some of my friends before is go try to figure out people's Myers-Briggs persona or their disc profile, right? Like, and feed it a bunch of LinkedIn profiles, and because there are tools out there that do that already that are on the market, and I've seen some agents that do this too. They're mostly accurate, but it's like I said, mostly accurate, still better than going it blind a lot of the time. And to your point, right? Like if you had another one that kind of helps you write emails, that might be a prompt like, hey, figure out their Myers-Briggs profile and then use that because different people like to be communicated in different ways and care about different things. But yeah, like there's a pro tip for any of you out there that haven't tried to do it. Just go ask it your disc profile or your Myers-Briggs, see how close it gets. Or you want to be a little fun, go ask it what a Hogwarts house you'll be in, right? Are you Slytherin or you know? But
Yep.
there's all those sort of fun. Or, I even one time with some friends we asked, so what kind of Jedi would I be? And what would my name be? There's all sorts of this random fun stuff you can get it to do.
Exactly. And you can ask it why. So after it gives you a result, you can say, hey, explain to me why you got there. And it'll say, oh, one time you said this, you think this way, you do these things. And so I think that also is always, yeah, it's fun to get the result, but then it's also cool to learn about yourself in other ways. So I think that's always a really fun thing to do.
So I'm curious. So you built some of these things. How are you using these agents in in your work, in your consulting work? Like, are you starting to expose them to customers? Are you giving them to customers? Are you hearing from customer problems and kind of going out and building specific solutions for any of them at this point?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, and that's the thing. Like, your first one of your first questions was, how did I get into it? Why? And you ask everyone this. At first, then the amount of time I think a lot of builders spent was kind of just without any, no financial results or no like immediate impact, just to learn. There was a lot of that time. And then and I think collectively the community started to figure out that one great use case was allowing people to discover me and my services through, because H&I is a marketplace. So I mentioned
Yes.
13,000 uses of that one. And so at some point I adjusted it, and I think I followed suit. I think someone else did it first. And I just have a little, hey, here I'm the person who built it. This is my LinkedIn. This is my newsletter. Check me out if you want more stuff like this. So the idea is, and this is why I think, even when I think back initially to why I got into all this in the first place, was, hey, rather than being replaced by AI, let me figure out AI. And so the ICP builder, I'll give you this other tidbit. I have heard of people paying, and I will caveat that when firms or consultants go out and do an ICP for you, they're doing interviews, they're spending a lot of time, and they're doing a lot more than my agent is doing. But they're very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars to go build this persona information. And so to be able to say, I can deliver a lightweight version of what I would do for you, you can get validation, you can see how I think, because a lot of my prompting and how I think about things is behind the scenes in that agent. And if it's useful to you and you want more of that, you want a deeper, more personalized version of that, then here's how to find me, and then you can come work with me. And so a couple of my agents you probably use, like one of them is evaluating the messaging on your web page.
And the last question of that prompt is, hey, do you want this emailed to you? Because I'm sure, like, marketing tip there, like, hey, do you mind if I add you to my newsletter? Right? Like, hey, I'll send you a follow-up email and put you in a sequence or whatnot just to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a way and it's a good way to demonstrate to people what, how I think about things, how I would approach it. If they feel they like the output, they like we talked about, if you like how I approach this from a, solutioning perspective, then here's how to find me. So that's mostly how I've been using it so far.
I'm curious with that, and maybe this is a pro tip for you. Have you started taking any of these agents that do some of those, like, value added free giveaways to customers and started putting it on your website and like use it as conversion form?
I I want to. It's like one of the things on my to-do list, but I think it's the traffic that you get from, because Agent AI is a marketplace
Mm,
and people can discover you there. I'm more likely to find new people who find my agent on Agent AI's marketplace than
got it.
people who get to my website some other way. And that's also just the nature of my website. It's not like I have anything that's driving a ton of traffic
That
to
makes
it.
sense.
So the reverse is true. So I do have, this is the pro tip, is UTM parameters. So in the link that the agent produces to get to my website, it has a UTM code, so I can track that they came from Agent AI, and I can track what agent they came from. So Agent AI, I think it's like 40% or something of the traffic to my site comes through Agent AI.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. That is incredible. And I'll say shout out, and if you want to listen to it, Jen Steele, it was an episode we did a couple weeks ago, is doing a lot of that now. And she started taking some of these agents she's built and putting it on her website and using it as lead conversion tools to do a lot of the same stuff you're talking about. But that's awesome if you're starting to see that traffic, and if you're getting thousands of executions on it, on the site, then I could see how absolutely some of those are going to follow through. They always do. Um, so I think that kind of leads us to the next question is like, all right, you told me before we started, before we hit record, just to kind of share a little bit of that conversation, like, oh my gosh, the agents that you were building 3 months ago compared to the stuff you're doing now is just light and day different because you're learning and experiencing it and getting so much better. And the models are clearly changing on us and getting better too. Um, Talk to us a little bit about like some of the challenges and also some of the like, what are some things that you've learned from kind of doing this that tips to share with other builders out there?
Yeah, you nailed it when you said when you made the product manager analogy. So on one hand, you have to constantly, so I'll build agents, and a lot of them are things I'm not using on a day-to-day basis personally. Maybe of course, a lot of times I'm building them for my own use cases, but very often they're for others to use. And so I don't go back and run the agent, and the models change, agent AI improves and changes things. And so sometimes the agents, there's sometimes they break, but sometimes you go in and you were using a previous version of OpenAI's model and you upgrade it and you see that your output has improved significantly because it's now doing reasoning.
Yeah.
So this stuff is just evolving so fast. And so everyone's also learning that. And then I learn as I build each subsequent agent. So what I've done on agent number 10, or whatever number I'm on now, is has the beautiful output, has a thoughtful input form, has all of these things that maybe I didn't do in agents, 1 and 2. So it's just one of those things, and it's so cool seeing myself and others figure that all of this stuff out along the way. And then you'll see ideas from other builders. So the example I mentioned where it has, built by me, and here's a link to my other places, someone else did that before me. I'm forgetting who, so I can't credit them, but you learn from others and you go back. And so I've had to go back to all of my old agents and add that element to them. So you do have to think about it from, you truly own these because they're, as a product manager, they're mine. And as technology improves, I want to bring that stuff in to all of my agents. So that's a challenge and one of the novel things about being able to work with new technology.
Shaalin, I never even asked you this, but now like, have you ever coded in your life? Do you have any backgrounds in software development?
Not so, I did some SQL coding.
Okay.
So when I was at Capital One, I
Okay.
mentioned I was in kind of data analytics. So some SQL coding, but
But no, like,
that's
web
about it.
dev or anything. It was just more, yeah, database query. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just another, this is no code, right? This is all no code. If you could write workflows, you can get in here and build agents.
Exactly. And it's what's cool is you learn, you see how to think in that way. You just see you start to, it's hard to explain without getting it all the gory details, and people can, when you go in there, you'll see that it's something you'll be able to learn, but you understand how some of the, how someone who, and it's gotten me interested in actually wanting to learn how to code because I see how fun it is to learn how to think through the logic of some of these things, how to structure building blocks in the right way, how to think through kind of the design of the system. And you can learn some of that mindset, if you will, just in Agent AI because you know, it's all stuff anybody would understand. But it has actually gotten me more interested in going deeper and saying, I want to learn more about that.
Well, Cursor or Windsurf, you don't have to learn how to code. They'll just continue to use your same product management logic and, writing scope of work, and they can do the coding for you. So yeah,
That's right.
keep moving forward. So, all right, talk to me like, what is your vision, right? Like, what does wildly successful look like going forward for kind of your consulting business, and kind of what do you want to build in the future?
So we talked, you mentioned this earlier. We didn't talk much about it, but I want to bring it back to this idea.
Please.
You talked about how you talked about a lot of people either wanting to or getting into entrepreneurship from tech.
Mm.
And part of my hypothesis for why that's happening is because a lot of people build really specialized skills because as that industry got more mature, people got really good at certain skills, right? You see a lot of people master the art of selling and are out there teaching people how to do that and able to teach the new generation because, when they started, nobody had the playbook for how to do that. Industry go to market, nobody had the playbook for that. Now I've done it. And so it creates an opportunity to say, I have done something in a specialized way. This is for people in a lot of different functions, for a lot of people who are probably listening to this. And how can you take that and leverage it, empower other people? It's really rewarding, right? Because you're able to say, okay, I've done that. I can help someone else make it easier for the next person. So what I want to build is I want to start to build towards what the future of that specialized consulting looks like, because it's not going to be like it was a couple of years ago pre-AI, where it's really expensive because that person is a specialist and you don't know what they're doing, but they're the only one who knows how to do it. And, that's the only way to get it done. But you can't use AI to do it because AI doesn't know AI doesn't know the ins and outs of the financial services industry. Like it can help people for sure, but on its own, it's not going to be enough. So bringing together that expertise that I have or anyone out there has in their specialized functional area and the power of what AI enables, I would like to figure out what the future of that looks like and how I can deliver that to people at a more cost-effective way than the old way, um, and in a way that still allows me to, to be able to help people and consult for them, but without having to do all of the different things that a consultant in the old era or the current era would have to do.
Yeah, you could set up these agents to do the research or to figure out these elements, and you just orchestrate it all. Absolutely. That's really cool. So let me kind of throw this out kind of as we get to kind of closing here. How can others in the community support you, and what kind of help are you looking for? Collaborators, feedback, testers, somebody to build stuff with? Like, yeah, you're clearly already very well engaged and collaborating with a lot of people in there, but yeah, how can others help you? And what's the best way to connect with you?
Right now, try the agency out. You can the ICP builder is right there. It's like somewhere on the main page you'll find it. Use that, and then from my name you can find all of my other agents. So try them out. Send feedback. Email me. All message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to hear all feedback. I would love to work with people who want to build agents because, as we mentioned in the beginning, learning some of the use cases of exactly how people would want these built is something that it's good to have that direct communication. The second thing is I recently started a newsletter that is about a bunch of things. It's about industry go-to-market, agents, AI and marketing, and I'm sure we can share a link in the show notes or something
Definitely.
on how to get to that. But if you also just go to my website, industrygtm.com, you can find the newsletter there and sign out. But I share all the agent stuff there, so you don't have to go to Agent AI and check for my newest agents or whatever. When I launch new ones, I give people an overview, often demo video, but I also share all sorts of other stuff that can help anyone
Love it.
that's interested in AI or that works in marketing today.
I'll definitely make sure we put all that in the show notes. What about platforms? Like, is there any, are you more LinkedIn? Are you more of a X person? You more kind of in the community? What's the best way for people to connect with you or
Yeah,
shoot you an email on your website? What's your preferred best way to kind of connect with you on stuff?
LinkedIn is the best one. So you
Okay.
can, my name is pretty unique, so you'll find it there, or linkedin.com/in/slash Shaalin. It's my first name.
Perfect. Perfect. And I guess kind of one last question, like, what have I not asked you? What are kind of final tips or things that you want to kind of leave people with as inspiration or things that you've learned that needs to get said and kind of put
I,
out
I
there?
I would just double down on what I said about if you are a specialist and you know a specific domain area and you know it really well. I think this is you're the perfect person. I mean, everyone should be on Agent AI, but you're the perfect person for it because you know how to get a specific thing done, and you've probably used AI to do elements of it. And you can build agents to do that, and then see where it goes. Right? It can be a lead magnet, like the stuff we talked about of how mine are used today. Maybe it turns into something that you're able to build and sell to people, and there's a business there. But I think that there's a lot of power in that if you have a niche that you're in that you can use Agent AI today.
I love that because I think there's something, everybody is an expert at something. Right? They just don't always realize they are. Just turn that into a process, build a workflow for it, and get it out there. Um, no one's going to know and find out that stuff unless you put it out there. There's just no way to, right? I think that's great kind of leaving advice on us for today. And Shaalin, I really appreciate you joining the conversation and kind of jumping on here. And thanks for your time. And to everybody else out there, go keep building, keep imagining, and keep building agents of the future. Take care, everybody.